Gregg Popovich is considered as one of the greatest NBA coaches in history. With 5 rings, 3 Coach of the Year awards, and a whopping 22 straight years of making the playoffs, many wonder how a simple assistant coach with literally no professional experience would end up humiliating every team in the NBA for almost 3 decades. Well, it all comes down to one special tactic that allowed him to achieve the most wins in NBA history. And to find out how he became such a legendary coach, we have to go back to when Popovich wasn't coaching basketball, but was instead in the Air Force.
Gregg Popovich is a leader for all of us.
Because he believes in what's right for the game of basketball and for the NBA.
He's the greatest coach in the history of the game.
Unlike many of the greatest coaches, basketball wasn't always Gregg Popovich's main focus. After high school, he enrolled at the United States Air Force Academy, where he played basketball for 4 years and was even the team's leading scorer. And then he would go and serve 5 years of active duty, including a stint in Eastern Europe and the Soviet Union as an intelligence officer. This experience gave him a unique global perspective that would later influence his basketball coaching style way ahead of other NBA stars, and this would also give him an unfair advantage. Now, after leaving the Air Force, Popovich's coaching career would begin to take shape. He would first be an assistant basketball coach at the Air Force, but in 1979 he got his head coaching big break at the Pomona Pizza Sagehens. And to answer your next question, a sagehen is the largest grouse in North America and does look a little freaky. But a more interesting point is that during this coaching tenure, he met and became great friends with one Larry Brown at the University of Kansas. In fact, Popovich would take off the 1985-1986 season just to learn from his mentor on the bench. This partnership and relationship would prove crucial to Popovich's development as a coach, and most notably would be relevant in about 20 years' time from this moment. But how did a college assistant coach go to the NBA and become a head coach, especially as he had no goals to gain the necessary experience? The turning point came in 1988 when Larry Brown won the college championship and then became head coach of the San Antonio Spurs. He invited Popovich along as an assistant, giving him his first taste of a job in the NBA. Now, his tactical mind and ability to connect with players really quickly made an impression, but there was a long way to go from assistant to dynasty maker, and he would actually have to get dirty in order to seize this opportunity. But how would he control his own destiny to achieve his hidden goals and so quickly create a winning culture that would reverberate around the entire world? Now, everyone knows Popovich is the longest tenured NBA coach at 28 years with one team. And perhaps a lot of you also know that his journey began with the Spurs as a head coach in 1996. But when he took that job, few could have predicted the unprecedented era of generational success that was about to unfold. Here's the thing, he was actually booed and had a decade of notoriety for how he became coach in the first place, because he had none of the qualifications. The current godly coaching aura he has didn't begin until much later. In addition to that, even to this day, he has been known by some as a media bully, whose responses go between rude and funny. However, behind the scenes and in reality, Popovich is loved by players across the league, and he also knows how to crack a smile despite his outward appearances. Coach can be pretty funny.
Well, that's the third question, isn't it? Did you just get 2? My bad.
Good luck. No second. Give me a second one.
No, I don't want to. No.
I want a second one.
Are you serious? that person must have.
Look at that. Lock up. That's what we do, Coach Pop.
So how do we go from 1988 to 1996? As far as his assistant journey went, when Brown resigned from the Spurs in 1992, Popovich was the only one on the staff that was asked to remain in San Antonio. But he decided to have a stint with the Golden State Warriors instead, under the legendary coach Don Nelson, and yet he would be lured back to San Antonio through an offer he could not refuse. Not becoming head coach, but becoming the general manager for the organization in 1994. Qualified? Not to many observers in the NBA, but to the new owner? Definitely. The reason for his hire lies in this: Popovich's unique blend of basketball knowledge, leadership skills, and intelligent strategic thinking. He had a vision for the Spurs that went beyond just winning games here and there. It was about building a culture of excellence and teamwork that would stand the test of time. As he was given the general manager position, the Spurs signed coach Bob Hill in 1994. While it does seem like Popovich is stumbling upwards, at this point in time, something very interesting started to happen to his aspirations. Hill had an impressive start as head coach, guiding the Spurs to a 62-win season, followed by a 59-win season in his second year in 95-96. According to Hill, in the first season, Popovich would mostly sit in his office and be largely detached from the team. But then he said, the start of the second year, he started to get a little bit more nosy, getting involved and making comments about this or that. However, an injury to their best player, David Robinson, led the team to begin the third season under Hill with a 3-win, 15-loss record. And from the outside, just like that, Gregg Popovich would become Pop, his beloved nickname for almost 30 years. Hill was fired. After the game, Popovich gets on the bus, tells the team that he would now be the coach, and they drove to the airport. Hill later said that he always wanted to be coach. That was the first time that we stumbled, or whatever you want to call it. It was the first time since I had been there. He just seized the opportunity to take over the team. However, these things are best said from a player perspective. The legendary aging star Dominic Wilkins said about Pop, he had the team's respect even before he became head coach. Being the GM of that team, he commanded respect. That wasn't an issue if the players were going to respect him or not, or adapt to him. He held people accountable, and that's one of the things you saw right off. He didn't accept guys loafing, being lazy out there on the floor. He wanted you to play at a high level all the time. His whole thing was just get out there, work hard. Ultimately, Popovich didn't want to be the general manager, bring in the players, but not be able to construct the building to complete his vision. He had that natural internal coaching desire to teach and actually have teams play in a way that he thought would be the best way to win. But what was so different from Popovich to Hill? How did he actually have everyone within the Spurs organization not revolt, buy in, and find the joy in playing for him as their new leader? While the players loved scoring and using Coach Hill's offensive prowess and strategies, Pop stressed the defensive end and being accountable. This was sort of like his mentor Larry Brown, except Popovich would approach the playbook very much like a teacher and also like a military leader. Only after the team had fully mastered, say, 5 plays, would he put in the 6th. Once you've mastered that, now we can do a 7th. He simplified the game and focused on the joy of playing as a team for each other. And that was very important because for the rest of that season, the Spurs were completely decimated by injuries, and so Coach Popovich's defensive system was designed to work no matter who was in the game. And it had to because you never really knew who was going to be in the game. But the lack of talent due to Robinson being out, along with many others, was simply too much for the Spurs, who would win only 20 games, which means in a poetic twist, instead of winning 62, they lost 62. Now, as a reminder, this would be the only time that would happen for the next 20 years. The Spurs would either win 50 games at minimum or maintain that 60% win rate during shortened seasons, every single regular season. So how would Popovich turn this around? How could you go from one 20-win season and have that be the only experience you need to become a legend? Well, when your team performs that badly, you tend to get the first pick in the draft, and therefore you get to take a generational college talent in Tim Duncan, a quiet but dominant power forward to pair with David Robinson, the nickname the Twin Towers. Now, he started by fusing their talents in that first season together, 2 generational big men who could have easily clashed if not managed properly. Imagine having Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant on the same team. Instead, Popovich created an environment where their skills complemented each other perfectly. And when I say this approach quickly yielded results, that is meant very literally. They made the Western Conference semifinals only to lose to the legendary Jazz team. That would, of course, go on to lose to Michael Jordan and the Bulls. Now you're thinking, okay, well, like most title-winning teams, you need another season, right? Get to the conference finals again, maybe keep working out the kinks. He really didn't. Now, while they weren't very high on the table, in fact, they were near the bottom in terms of offense, their defense, it was incredible with Robinson and Duncan and ranked first in the league. Now, this balance of elite defense and efficient offense became a hallmark of Popovich's team. But as he went on coaching throughout the years, that offense would become better and better. It's rarely that you see such a balance of defense and offense. And so this 99 season was when everything came together. Despite a lockout-shortened 50-game season, the Spurs dominated, finishing with a 37-13 record. Yes, that is on pace for 50-plus wins had they played all 82 regular season games. They then carried this momentum into the playoffs, where they showcased their defensive capabilities and team-first mentality. Not only would they dominate the first round against the Timberwolves, they would eviscerate the young Kobe and Shaq Lakers in the second round before reaching the Western Conference Finals. And it was here they would face a hungry Portland Trail Blazers team, a squad that was also priming themselves full of talent and championship desire behind young stars like Rasheed Wallace. The Spurs defense stifled them like they stifled everybody else, holding them to under 80 points a game over a 4-game sweep. This set the stage for an NBA Finals showdown with the New York Knicks who had been lurking for an NBA title the whole decade and had actually lost to the finals a couple years earlier. However, the legendary battle would not come to be. The finals were an absolute masterclass in Popovich's coaching philosophy. The Spurs' balanced attack proved too much for the Knicks to handle. Tim Duncan dominated the paint. Tim Robinson provided veteran leadership and also dominated the paint. And their role players all made crucial contributions. The result? A 4-1 series win and the Spurs' first NBA championship. This was more than just a trophy for Popovich and the Spurs. It was validation of their approach to the game, defense, and accountability to one another. It proved that a team could win at the highest level by prioritizing fundamentals and selfless play over individual stardom. However, Pop wasn't content with just one championship. He knew that to build a true dynasty, the Spurs would have to evolve constantly. He would have to figure out how to fuse all of his ideas into one secret coaching tactic. And as the NBA landscape changed, with new superstars emerging and offensive strategies evolving, could he continue to develop young talent while maximizing the potential of his aging stars? How would he handle the inevitable roster turnover that comes with sustained success and a change in eras? As the new millennium unfolded, the NBA landscape shifted dramatically. Since their last title, the Kobe Shaq Lakers under Phil Jackson had come into full force and embarrassed them in the playoffs on their way to a three-peat. But the Spurs maintained their 50-win records and their contender status. His ability to adapt his coaching style and team strategies to different eras was and is unparalleled. He understood that the game was evolving and that he needed to evolve with it. But how did he manage to keep winning when other dynasties crumbled? The key was Popovich's knack for getting the best out of both superstars and role players. He had a unique talent for identifying each player's strengths and integrating them into a cohesive system. This is because he actually cared deeply for his players as people.
Just having him paying attention to what you're doing down there. It's not like you went down there and he forgot about you and doesn't care about you. Like, I would come back up and he would be talking to me about it and just let me know that they're still supporting me.
And despite him doing this for his players and now having this title, he was still insulted by other legendary coaches, even such as Phil Jackson, essentially saying that the first title in '99 wasn't a real one because of the shortened season. And even later calling the Spurs coaching staff the simulator crew, essentially again insulting the zero experience assistant Popovich for magically getting a head coaching job and lucking into a title. Popovich would ignore the voices and instead strive to silence them through his achievements. Take, for example, the transition from the David Robinson era to the Tim Duncan era. As the Admiral aged, Popovich began to shift the team's focus towards Duncan, who would become the cornerstone of the franchise for years to come. But he didn't stop there. He recognized the need for a dynamic backcourt to complement Duncan's dominant postplay, because David Robinsons really do not grow on trees. Enter Tony Parker and Manu Ginobili. Parker was drafted 28th in the 2001 draft, and he was a lightning-quick point guard from France. Ginobili, who joined the team in 2002 despite being drafted in 1999, was an unorthodox left-handed shooting guard from Argentina. Popovich saw potential in these international players that other teams had simply overlooked. They assumed all the talent would come from North America, and Popovich took on the challenge to mold them into stars. This international flavor became a hallmark of all Popovich's future teams. He embraced players from diverse backgrounds, recognizing that basketball talent knows no borders, and this was a deep connection back to his Air Force days. The global approach not only gave the Spurs a competitive advantage, but also helped internationalize the NBA game. But how did this international scouting and his adaptability as a coach translate to more championships? Well, it all came down to Popovich's ability to create a system, a more complex system, that could exploit the weaknesses of any opponent. The 2003 season was a perfect example of this. The Spurs finished the regular season with a 60-win, 22-loss record, ranking 3rd in the league only, but in defensive points allowed per game, number 1. Offensively here, there were actually no slouches, ranking 12th this time and presenting a balance of elite defense and efficient offense that was even better than in 1999. However, it's important to note that while they were only 12th in points scored, they would be 7th in offensive rating. This means that while they shot less because of how they played, when they did shoot, they made more than all but 6 teams. Some coaches go 20 years before they figure out this secret. So now we go into the playoffs and the Spurs would face a tough test, yet again the Shaq and Kobe Lakers. However, they were gunning for their 4th straight championship, and the Spurs and Popovich understood that this would lead to fatigue There would be cracks in the armor, and his team would be ready this time. Dismantled might be the wrong word, but the Lakers dynasty, this is where it ended, and it was Popovich and the Spurs. Duncan would absolutely take over with 28 points and 12 rebounds per game with his usual incredible defense. They would then go on to defeat the Dallas Mavericks in the Western Conference Finals and the New Jersey Nets in the NBA Finals. This would secure their second championship. Does that sound easy? That's how you know you're really good at something, because it looks like that from the outside. This victory was particularly sweet for Popovich as it marked the end of David Robinson's legendary career and now the beginning of a new era for the Spurs. You see, when he had usurped the coaching job and simply installed himself as pilot of the Spurs, Robinson was not on board, and it was only now that the press was starting to change the perspective. In 1996, Robinson said, "We're all very shocked. Do I agree with the decision? No, but it's not my decision to make. I feel like if we have some adversity, we should try to stick it out and stay together." But being a Navy man himself, he respected Popovich, bought in, and everybody else followed. Now, he was rewarded with 2 championships. Coach Pop wasn't content though to rest on his success now that he had delivered perennial excellence to the city of San Antonio. He knew that after reaching the playoffs for this many years in a row and winning 2 titles, most teams would reach the end of the era and begin losing. The Pistons, the Bulls, the Lakers, everyone has done it over time. Popovich needed to reinvent the team around Duncan. With Robinson retired, he then turned to Parker and Ginobili to form a new Big Three. Continuing on with the same system that had worked before, this reinvention paid off. In 2005, they actually made the finals again, this time against the defending champion Detroit Pistons. This series was a clash of defensive titans and would reunite Popovich with his mentor Larry Brown, who, coming off of his first title, was looking to grow his own legacy. But this is where Popovich could show one of his secret powers, the ability to make in-game adjustments, and this proves crucial. The Spurs' balanced attack, led by Duncan's post play, Parker's speed, and Ginobili's creativity, proved way too much for the Pistons to handle. Pop's genius ability to drop huge plays at the end of games
Here's Ginobili to Ori for 3. Oh, my!
and get the ball into the right player's hands would be critical. Larry Brown would not make these adjustments, and Popovich would. In a thrilling 7-game series, the Spurs emerged victorious, securing their 3rd championship in 7 years. But what made this victory even more impressive? How was Popovich able to actually adapt the style of play to this level of degree just in 2 short years? While the defense was still sound and strong, the Spurs had become way more dynamic on offense. They utilized Parker's speed in the pick and roll, and they used Ginobili's unpredictable play to keep defenses off balance. They increased their 3-point shooting and started to evolve. But specifically, the 3-point shot from the corner is what Popovich had figured out many years ago would be the most effective way to score quick points. The Spurs were always way ahead of the league in terms of how many of their 3-pointers were taken from that position. And this would peak with his 2014 offense, which would actually change the league. Of course, now everybody knows that and everybody does it. All of a sudden, the coach that everybody thought stole the job, had no experience or right to actually be there, was creating a dynasty and revolutionizing the way the game was played. Never mind that he actually hates the 3-point shot, this was the beginning. He had already sowed the seeds of efficient offense and therefore found one of the most efficient shots. From the front office to the coaching staff to the players on the court, everyone bought into his system. The culture emphasized teamwork, selflessness, and continuous improvement. And in the spirit of improvement, despite losing in Game 7 of the 2006 Western Conference Finals and being just shy of his 4th title, the Spurs maintained their magic. In 2007, the Spurs finished with a 58-win, 24-loss record, ranking 2nd in the league in defensive rating, and offensively, guess what? They were efficient as always, ranking 5th in offensive rating. This was kind of becoming Popovich's trademark. They would actually meet Mike D'Antoni's Phoenix Suns during the playoffs and have a legendary series. It was hard-fought, it was contested, but guess what? Popovich won. Why? Because he simply had a team that was efficient on offense and could play defense and actually slow down the game that really took away the power of Mike D'Antoni's high-tempo, speed-driven offense. That and there were some weird league suspensions that interfered, but I don't think anybody thought that the Suns were going to truly defeat the Spurs. They would then go on to face LeBron James and the Cleveland Cavaliers in the NBA Finals. James was already a superstar at 22, he was already a superstar at 18, but he was looking to cement his legacy with his first championship. But as always, Popovich had other plans. The series was once more a masterclass in Spurs team basketball, at least for now, and I think at this point you are understanding the rhythm here. Tony Parker's speed, Ginobili's creativity, Tim Duncan's consistency, they simply swept the series 4-0. 4th championship in 9 years. All of a sudden, everybody was talking about the Lakers dynasty with 3 titles in 3 years, and here are Popovich and the Spurs with the most titles since Michael Jordan retired. However, the road ahead wasn't actually all smooth sailing. The NBA landscape was changing rapidly. The Celtics decided, hey, we want to win. They won the championship in 2008. Kobe Bryant's Lakers would then take the next 2 titles in 2009 and 2010. Now, despite these challenges throughout these years of change, Popovich's Spurs remain still a model of consistency, continuing to make the playoffs every year and often as a top seed in the Western Conference. And while he had evolved more than any other coach during his career, and while his offense and defense were now on equal planes of mastery and genius, he had to finally nail down what it meant to be Gregg Popovich the coach. The secret tactic that had given him so much success and would still give him so much more, that fused his basketball knowledge with his coaching genius. And how could he ensure that the ideas were so perfect that the Spurs would continue to win and thrive, such that he could put together the most perfect and beautiful basketball ever played? Though he will be the first to tell you that it does not begin with your in-game ideas.
If you don't know how to draw a play, or you don't know what to do out of bounds, or at the end of a game, well, then you probably shouldn't be coaching. So I assume we all know that stuff. There's no magic. I don't have any secret plays.
Popovich's power lay in his ability to manage personalities and keep his team motivated year after year. He knew when to push his players and when to ease off. He had obviously made some people cry, like Tony Parker.
Has Pop ever made you cry?
Hell yeah. A couple of times, my rookie year. He's a tough coach to play for. He's very demanding.
But he also changed his approach when necessary. He fostered a culture of accountability where everyone, from the stars to the end of the bench, were expected to contribute. And yes, that also means riding them hard and sometimes riding them with sarcasm. While other coaches chased superstar talent, Pop was quietly perfecting a different formula. But what exactly was this mysterious Popovich philosophy that was so unique compared to other coaches? And in the end, what was his actual strategy as a coach to dominate for so long? While Pop has proven many times to be a basketball genius, his offensive acumen only truly revealed itself later in his career, something to be discussed in the 2014 offense. Whereas his defensive mastery was on display the whole time. From 1998 to 2017, his teams were a top 5 defense in 14 seasons, with entirely different players in entirely different eras. Beyond his military background helping drill his teams into highly efficient systems, including defensive switches and using zone defenses in order to make teams very uncomfortable. And this would always allow him to adapt as needed in playoff series. Popovich likes to create mismatches on defense in that rather than matching each position, point guard to point guard, shooting guard to shooting guard, he'll take his best defenders to guard powerful ball handlers and not focus so much on height difference if they're able to execute before it becomes a problem. While he has used zone defenses, he also creates pockets where players like Manu Ginobili can cover an area themselves, forcing easy turnovers. Naturally, there is more to it from season to season, but a lot of this execution lies with Popovich's general coaching philosophy centered around 3 key principles. The most basic, of course, is emphasizing basketball fundamentals. This was legendary, in fact so legendary that Tim Duncan's nickname is the Big Fundamental. He drilled his teams relentlessly on the basics of basketball, from proper footwork to precise passing. This focus on the essentials allowed the Spurs to execute simple game plans with machine-like efficiency and even under the intense pressure of playoff basketball, because there was no thinking, they could just do. Secondly, through this, he fostered a team-first mentality, and this is represented by one of his most powerful sayings, "Pound the rock." This idea emphasized persistence and small progress over time. He ensured his team understood that the first 1,000 attempts of something might not bring the desired result, but it's only through those unsuccessful attempts that they will eventually strike the one blow that shatters the rock. And that is a breakthrough that leads to the next NBA title. Through this saying, through this understanding, and when you have a team playing in the playoffs every year with high expectations and demands, you need to focus on character alongside talent. But this went beyond basketball, often prioritizing players who demonstrated strong work ethic, humility, and obviously the team-first attitudes over more talented but potentially disruptive personalities. This approach created a locker room culture that was the envy of the entire league, with players fully buying into the team's goals and values. Popovich's unique philosophy was evident in the way he managed his players. He treated everyone, from superstars to benchwarmers, with the same level of respect and accountability, something he instilled from day one in 1996. This equal approach extended to the Spurs' offensive playing style as well. Popovich emphasized ball movement, selfless play, and created an offense where everyone could touch the ball and had opportunities to contribute, no matter the era. This style not only made the Spurs incredibly difficult to defend, but also kept all players engaged and invested in the team's success. This was absolutely no place for ego.
It starts with the character and the no ego. A lot of credit goes to Dave Robinson and Tim Duncan.
Timmy.
Coachable, allow themselves to be coached that way. Allow everybody else to fall in line and be coached that way.
Yeah, I like that.
They find guys, character people in weird places that are really good at what they do basketball-wise, but even better people and that are selfless.
Yeah.
And it's all about the group.
However, even with this philosophy and as the Spurs continue to rack up regular season wins, an even bigger challenge loomed: the super team of the Miami Heat. LeBron James hell-bent on revenge against the Spurs for 2007 and still looking for his first title, and Dwayne Wade looking to recapture his magic from his 2006 NBA championship, teamed up to dominate the league. Could Popovich's system still compete in this new NBA landscape? Could a coach who had already won 4 titles reinvent himself yet again? As the league trended towards more three-point shooting and faster-paced offenses, Pop adapted, as he always does. But when defense wasn't enough to shut down those new offenses, you might have to increase your scoring as well. He empowered his elite shooting threats while maintaining that defensive identity. The constant Spurs and Popovich evolution reached its pinnacle here in 2014. But to understand the magic of the 2014 Spurs under Popovich, you need to rewind to the heartbreak of 2013, a disappointment that would probably crush all other teams. After years of not making the finals and being eliminated in the playoffs, the Spurs once again found themselves in a position to win a championship. A few young players, including one that has championship pedigree in Kawhi Leonard, a couple of veterans, all still around the legendary Popovich Big Three. They were seconds away from clinching their 5th title since 1999, leading the Miami Heat super team 3-2 in the series, and they were up 5 points with 28 seconds left in Game 6. LeBron James hits a clutch three-pointer, the Spurs miss a few free throws, and Ray Allen hits one of the most clutch shots in NBA history, tying the game and eventually leading to a Heat Game 7 victory. Now, just because this loss would have crushed lesser teams doesn't mean it didn't crush the Spurs. It did. I've never seen our team so broken, Parker says. While Ginobili admitted that the game killed him mentally. But Popovich wasn't about to let the setback derail what they had built. Instead, he used it as fuel, refocusing the team on their ultimate goal. As the summer wore on, I got angrier and angrier, Popovich says. I wanted to pull the guys back together and appeal to them and challenge them. I wanted to ask them, when you are kicked in the gut, how will you respond? And you know what? They answered him. Duncan said he would come back, Ginobili said he would re-sign, Parker said he was in. This Spurs team came back stronger, more determined, and more cohesive than ever before. But what exactly would this hunger look like? How did they elevate basketball to an art form, playing what many called the most beautiful game ever? Well, the 2014 regular season would answer that. They finished with a league-best 62-win, 20-loss record. That's seemingly a very Popovich kind of record, showcasing an incredible fusion of defense and offense unlike anything we had ever seen before. This balance would make them nearly impossible to beat consistently, and Pop would receive for this effort his 3rd Coach of the Year award. But it wasn't just these numbers that made this team special, it was how they achieved them. The Spurs' ball movement was absolutely mesmerizing. Their selfless play a joy to watch. They led the league in assists, averaging 25.2 a game. But it wasn't just about the quantity of these passes, it was simply the quality. The Spurs made the extra pass look routine, always finding the open man for the best possible shot. If you have a good shot, give it up for a better shot. If you have a better shot, give it up for the perfect shot. Their passes moved before players even reached their spot. With all of this, you might expect a high-scoring team. Then they were, but then you look at the scoring averages of all the players on the team during the regular season, it looks much like the Detroit Pistons 2004 team. Except everyone was contributing on offense as well as playing defense. They had so much volume from everybody that played, they didn't need anybody to go crazy every game to score 50. In fact, they only had 7 30-point games the whole year. Top players will average 30 points and just about make the playoffs, or not even make them. This was Popovich on another level with his team cohesion. How did Popovich keep on them to play this way every game?
But you got to play the right way. That means play hard and execute wisely. With the effort, the transition, the effort on the board, physicality in the half-court offense, and then pace back and play unselfishly. It's called basketball. Nothing hard about it.
Now, fusing this offensive approach with the tried and true Popovich defensive systems and coaching philosophy, this would lead to a playoff run that was nothing short of incredible. Now, they managed to defeat in the first round the Dallas Mavericks, but it would have a few uncharacteristic errors from a Popovich team and allow the Mavericks to push them to 7 games. This could serve as a bit of a wake-up call because then they swept the Portland Trail Blazers 4-0 in a much easier way, and in the Western Conference Finals they faced the Oklahoma City Thunder led by their dynamic duo of a young Kevin Durant and Russell Westbrook, future MVPs. They were pushed a little bit, but the Spurs managed to win that in 6 games. But it was in the NBA Finals where they would rematch with the Miami Heat and would give the Spurs an opportunity to truly cement their legacy, as they were peaking at the perfect time. In Game 1, the Spurs would win 110-95, overcoming the Miami Heat despite a malfunctioning air conditioning system that led to LeBron James cramping up in the 4th quarter. The San Antonio Spurs, though, played their game as if he was there and included a record-breaking offensive efficiency, making 14 out of 16 shots in the 4th quarter. In Game 2, LeBron James would lead the Heat to a narrow 2-point victory, bouncing back from his cramps in Game 1, and despite the Spurs' strong start, the Heat would have clutch plays, including a key 3-pointer with about a minute left to tie the series. And here's where Popovich would simply turn it on and never turn it off. Kawhi Leonard in Game 3 would score 29 points, the Spurs would win by almost 20 points and have a 2-1 series lead. Once again, their offensive efficiency, they would set a record with their shooting in the first half.
I don't think we'll ever shoot 76% in a half ever again.
It was here in Game 3 that the beauty of the Spurs play was seen by everybody.
That's beautiful offense. I hope the kids at home and their youth coaches just tape that possession and show it on an endless loop.
In Game 4, they would simply dominate again, winning by almost 20 points. This time, it was a San Antonio defense absolutely stifling Miami, refusing to allow LeBron James to take over like he had already done in Game 2. And in Game 5, San Antonio would close out the series again with another dominating victory, and even though they were trailing in this game, the Spurs' depth and teamwork overwhelmed them, completing their redemption arc and securing their 5th NBA title. Revenge for 2013 achieved. Kawhi Leonard was named Finals MVP for his offensive and defensive prowess, often keeping LeBron James frustrated. Popovich's offensive system and the symphony of passes that were created left the Heat's defense in absolute disarray. They were exhausted. They could not do anything to stop the Spurs. And that's exactly what they did the whole season. Their defense had made Popovich a legend and his team champion. But in 2014, their offense was the most efficient scoring machine the NBA Finals had ever seen. This was the beautiful game. But then you have to consider what's next for Popovich in terms of his goals and his ambition. This team represented everything Popovich had been trying to build since 1996. What more could he achieve, and what would this mean for the rest of the league who would now take inspiration from what Pop had created? Teams started to prioritize ball movement and player movement over isolation plays. The Golden State Warriors, who would go on to dominate the latter half of the decade, openly cited the 2014 Spurs as a major influence on their style of play. For Popovich, he no longer desired only championships, and he took on a new role as coach, something different. The Spurs continued to win under Leonard after the championship until their 50-win streak was finally over, and their 22 years of competing in the playoffs ended. Leonard would leave San Antonio to win a title with another team, Duncan, Parker, and Ginobili had retired, and Coach Pop would begin working with the next generation. See, there's a difference between developing and teaching and growing versus being able to fit the pieces of a puzzle together. Larry Brown is the former, Jackson is the latter. Popovich is both. And it's why, despite being well into his 70s, he looks to win again, with yet another legendary Spurs big man who could change the league. But many will contest that the 2004 Pistons team by his mentor Larry Brown is a greater championship than the 2014 Spurs. They also say that Phil Jackson has many more titles and thus he is actually the GOAT. Click to watch greatness and decide for yourself.